إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما ما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue in the chapter of Al-Istighatha, and as we said that the chapter of Al-Istighatha من أعظم أبواب وأعظم الأبواب في كتاب التوحيد. It is from the most tremendous chapters in the book of Tawheed, which we start Friday, September the 7th, 2018, 7:09 or 7:06, which coincides on the Hijri calendar today, which is the 26th of the Hijjah, 1439 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. We were continuing in the chapter of all the different evidences that the great Imam Al-Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, we put in the chapter, and from those evidences is those ayat in the book of Allah, as we started and we concluded yesterday. The ayah in which the great Imam that he put in the chapter, which is Surah Al-Ankabut, where we said that Allah Ta'ala upon the tongue of Ibrahim, where Ibrahim that he said to his people, اعبدوا الله واتقوه ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. And the ayah which Ibrahim mentioned is said to his people, he says, إذ قال لقومه اعبدوا الله واتقوه, worship Allah and uphold his boundaries by not transgressing them or surpassing them, and fear him. That is better for you if you only but knew. Then Ibrahim mentioned the ayah which is Surah Al-Ankabut, as we said yesterday, the class Wednesday. It says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْثَانًا وَتَخْلُقُونَ إِفْكًا. Verily, that which you invoke besides Allah are mere idols, and that you are in fabricating a lie. Verily, that which you are worshipping and invoking besides Allah does not own any provisions for you, so seek with Allah provisions and sustenance. Worship Him and direct all of your thanks to Him, and to Him you will be returning, or you will return. So if you look in the context as we talked about, discussed from the last class in Surah Al-Ankabut, as you find, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, as we talked about in the last class, that this ayah initially was mentioned upon the tongue of Ibrahim, Khalil Rahman. If you look to the context and look to the actual ayah, which is in the book of Allah, Jalla fil Ula. So Ibrahim, even he, alayhi wa ala nabina afdal as-salatu wa tammu taslim, you'll find that he also likewise, when he wanted to establish the worship of Allah alone, that he addressed them by establishing the proof, what they call Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, as we discussed this last class. As we talked about, if you look in the ayat, the establishment of Tawheed al-Ibadah was mentioned in the ayah. where Ibrahim was criticizing. He was criticizing and disparaging his people for them invoking besides him, which is worship. Then Ibrahim used as an argument and a proof to establish that Allah deserves to be worshipped alone by the category that we constantly mention, which is unification of Allah and His Lordship, which is the actions of Allah. So notice the argument and the proof he uses in the ayah where it says, those who you worship besides Allah do not own any provisions. As we know, mulk, or ownership, that is from Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, as we talked about. And also giving provisions is also from Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, from the unification of Allah and His Lordship. So seek with Allah those provisions alone. As we talked about in the last class, we also said that if one wants his provisions augmented or increased, then that one should worship Allah and be steadfast upon His obedience by also gathering between that and dua itself, of asking Allah, no doubt. For not only does one make dua to Allah for anything that he needs or anything that he wants, even a shis' fil hida or fil na'al, as somebody athar comes upon Ibn Abbas to ask Allah for everything, even if it's a shis' fil na'al, even if it's something of shoelaces that was broken in your shoes. If one should ask Allah, ask Him. And if you want your provisions to be increased, make dua to Allah and also put forth uprightness in performing those duties, which will also be a reason for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opening the doors of provisions. That's why it's combined in the ayah. If you look in your books, as we said, Allah ta'ala mentions Ar-Rizq. He says, seek with Allah provisions and sustenance and worship Him. As we talked about in the last class of the hadith, which is a Tirmidhi, where we talked about that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said that Allah said, Ya ibn Adam tafarragh li'ibadati amla'u sadraka ghinan wa asuddu faqrak wa illa taf'al malatu qalbaka wa sadraka shughlan wa la asuddu faqrak. O Ibn Adam, devote towards my worship, I will fill your heart up with contentment and enrichment. Amla sadraka ghinan, I will fill your heart with enrichment and contentment. And I will remove your poverty. And we know the ultimate poverty is what? Is of the heart. Regardless of what you have of worldly things, as long as one feels in his heart that he's still poor, he will always be poor. Or if he feels he's impoverished, he will always feel that he's impoverished, no matter how much wealth he has gathered. Then he says in the last part of the hadith that Allah Ta'ala says, and if you do not do that, I will fill your heart up with shughlan, meaning always constantly chasing after more, to the point where you will never be content. And I will not remove your poverty. So as we mentioned this ayah, number one, you'll find that Allah Ta'ala is what? Dispraising that which is associated with partners of Him, of course. But however, the question is to be asked, how is this ayah in direct correlation with the title of the chapter? Why did the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah use this ayah in the chapter? For what reason? Why is it utilized as an evidence and proof for the chapter? Why? Because if you look at Surah Al-Ankabut, Allah Ta'ala basically is talking about provisions. Meaning those who are in a state of being poor, or people who are in a state of poverty. For example, Allah Ta'ala says that which you invoke besides Him do not own any provisions. So seek with Allah provisions. Meaning, for a person that's poor, that he needs to seek or put forth the worship of istighatha with Allah in order for himself to be saved, in order to save himself from faqr, from poverty. And he is the one that deserves thanks likewise, after he is what? Relieved one
of their poverty. And if these asnam, those idols in which do not own any provisions, do not own any of these affairs, then how do you put forth this type of istighatha for these idols that you are what? That you are worshiping? I'll say it again. The ayah in the chapter is Surah Al-Ankabut. Why did the great Imam put this ayah in the chapter? What's the reason? What's the connection to the title? We're talking about istighatha, and we're talking about dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the ayah, if you look in your books, in Surah Al-Ankabut, it says, seek with Allah those provisions. Or seek with Allah sustenance. فَالْفَقِيرَ, the person who's poor. This is the reason why the ayah is put in the chapter. The person who's in state of being poor, or is poor, is a state in which he puts forth a dua, or a type of supplication, where he's in dire need, or he's in a state of adversity. He's impoverished. So, the type of supplication in which he utilizes, of course, the servant, in order to relieve himself of this type of stress, is istighatha. In order for what? That type of stress to be removed. In order to save himself from what, everyone? From poverty. So the dua in which he will put forth, or the supplication he will put forth for Allah, is what? Is istighatha. As we said, that istighatha means what, everyone? It's a type of dua which means what? It's a supplication of when a person's in a state of what? Not in a state of relief, but state of what? Of adversity and stress. So when one wants to seek relief from this type of stress, or the circumstances that he's facing, or these endeavors that he's facing that are considered hardships, then he will put forth this type of dua in order to relieve himself of the poverty he's facing. And on top of that, like we talked about, also from one, increasing his provisions, is not only just making dua to Allah, and also likewise worshiping Him, also likewise being thankful, also is a reason for provisions being increased. As we know, the ayat which comes in Surah Ibrahim, where Allah Ta'ala also mentions this. He says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ فَإِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ, which Allah Ta'ala mentions in Surah Ibrahim, that if you are thankful, that I will increase you. And if you are ungrateful, verily my torment, my punishment is severe. So, all these affairs helps one's provisions to be increased. Number one is the worship of Allah, and actualizing the monotheism, where one directs his dua or supplication to Allah. Number one, that is a reason, or the head of all reasons for increasement, of, if you want to say, lack of better words, for augmentation, or one's provisions to be increased. For number one is sincerity in worship. Number two is obedience. And number three is shukr, being thankful. And we know that shukr has those three pillars, which is what? What is done by the what? By the heart and the tongue and the actions, which is done, basically saying what is done by the limbs. Well, all of that is gathered in the poetry. The poet says, أَفَادَتْكُمُ النِّعْمَاءُ مِنِّي ثَلَاثَةٌ يَدِي وَلِسَانِي وَالضَّمِيرِ الْمُحَجَّبَةِ. Everybody already has it already. But by the heart, sincerity, obedience, and shukr, and one being thankful. For all these are reasons for what? His provisions to be being increased. A lot of people think it's just dua. Also, a reason for one's provisions to be increased is obedience. Obedience and uprightness will also help to open the door of provisions. Just like disobedience could be a reason for one's provisions being what? Also being cut. A lot of people don't know that. This disobedience could also be as a reason for what? for also being, or the servant being deprived of provisions due to disobedience. Due to the fact that Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned in his book called Dawa, he mentioned a hadith which comes in Imam Ahmad in his Musnad. He says, "Inna al-abla yuhmaru rizq bi sababi dhanban yusibu." As it comes in the narration, it says, verily the abd, the servant, is deprived of provisions because of a sin he committed. So it's the opposite effect. So the opposite of that is what? As provisions can be increased due to what? Obedience. So that's the reason why we said that the ibadah of ta'ah and uprightness and obedience and worship is a reason for what? Is a reason for one's provisions to be increased. Also the hadith that we said is collected in the Tirmidhi and other than them, in which what we said that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Allah said, "Ya bana adu tafarragh li'ibadati amla sadraka ghinan wa asuddu faqrak." O Ibn Adam, devote towards my worship, I will fill your heart up with enrichment. I will fill your heart with enrichment and contentment. And I will remove your poverty. And if you do not do that, he says, I will fill your heart up with shughlan, with you constantly being busy. Meaning, never being content. And I will not remove your poverty. So clearly this hadith shows what, everyone? That ibadah and devoted towards or ta'ah, obedience, is a reason for provisions to be what? Increased. That's not the point of why this ayah was mentioned in the chapter. That's just side benefit. What the reason for why this ayah was mentioned in the chapter is because of what, everyone? Because like we said, poverty, and we're not just talking about poverty of not having money. We're talking about the poverty of the heart, which is the most severest of poverty. Always feeling poor, even though you might not be in a state of poverty. It's something that is a test from Allah. No doubt, one being subjected to begging also is a test from Allah. Because no true man wants to be sticking his hand out to any other person. As we know, that's also a test and it's a calamity. But if one wants to have all these different types of affairs removed from him, like we said and mentioned, then we mentioned the three reasons of how one can attain that, which is number one, unifying Allah in His worship by asking Allah for provisions. And number two, as we mentioned, the ibadah, by performing abundance of worship and uprightness and obedience, and also likewise being thankful. So these are the reasons of what we mentioned. But however, the great Imam, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, that he put the ayah in the chapter, as we said, because if one wants to relieve himself, so notice I said the key word, relief. Because poverty, a person can be in a state of what? It's a state of stress. Especially a person that constantly feels poor even though he's not poor. That's a state, that's a calamity where he feels it's a circumstance where he feels stress. And to seek that type of relief, which is istighatha, then he turns it towards Allah. That istighatha, that relief, which, like we said, is only sought from Allah. And that these type of asnam, or those idols, like we said, do not own any of these provisions. So how can you seek relief from them? As is mentioned in the ayah. So that's the reason why you'll find that the great Imam, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, had put the ayah in the chapter because of this reason. So the next ayah, everyone, as we continue, as Allah Ta'ala says in His book, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنْ يَدْعُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ مَنْ لَا يَسْتَجِيبُ لَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ وَهُمْ عَنْ دُعَائِهِمْ غَافِلُونَ وَإِذَا حُشِرَ النَّاسِ كَانُوا لَهُمْ أَعْدَاءً وَكَانُوا بِعِبَادَتِهِمْ كَافِرِينَ. That Allah Ta'ala, then He mentions Surah Al-Ahqaf, as the great Imam put another ayah in the chapter to establish what we're speaking about now. Before we go on, as we talked about last class about the affair of the great Imam, one of the righteous that we, as some people think, that he's from the Sufiya, which he was not. Rather, he was truly from those who adhered to the Aqidah to Salaf and the correct belief, who was Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. As we talked about last class, and I'm going to give a little bit more details in this regard after the event, because I think it's time now. So who wants to call us some? Did it come in yet? Hold on for 1 second. It come in yet? It's not in yet? What happened? Oh, I thought my eyes went off. طيب. As we said, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, in regards to Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, which we'll give a little bit more details after the adhan, inshallah, as I spoke about last class. We'll read the ayah first, then we'll start to explain that affair in regards to Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. طيب. The next ayah, if you look at your books, in which the great Imam that he put in the chapter, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنْ يَدْعُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ مَنْ يَسْتَجِيبَ لَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. Who is more astray than the one who invokes besides Allah? What cannot answer him all the way up to the day of resurrection? And if the people are gathered, meaning everyone, all of the creation will be gathered on a plain on the day of resurrection, when everyone is brought back to life after they were in the graves and they were dead. He says, when those people and also likewise those objects which the people in this world directed their worship towards, all of the love or the connection which they claimed that they used to have with those idols, it will be cut off and it will flip to enmity and hatred. And also those idols would deny them and reject their worshiping of them on the day of resurrection. So as we talked about, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, everything in this world is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing this person. Wait, we got 1 more minute, I think. I think it says 7:27. It's Nadir. Yeah, it was 1 more minute. It said 7:27, I think. تفضل نذير. الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. ولا قوة إلا بالله. Remind me to make wudu before the comment. You guys can have a chair. Get a chair. Chair over there. You guys put on your knees.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمدا والسيد الفضيل وبعث مقام محمود الذي وحده. طيب, if the next ayah, I'm sorry, who's you asking me? You want to ask me something? I can't hear you. Oh, mommy, I don't know, right before the Iqam. طيب, in regards to what we was mentioning at the ayah, that Allah Ta'ala mentions in his book, وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّا يَدْعُو, who is more stray? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning a form of a question but was intended by a negation. Who is more stray? Meaning, there's no one that is more stray than the person who invokes besides Allah what will not answer him. So here some emphasis is put on in the form of also a negation, which is one of the most highest form of emphasis. To mention a context that has a question in it, but was intended by a negation, to negate something. And that's what you see here. That there's no one that is more astray. And we know the origin of the word dal or dalal, linguistically in the Arabic language, means someone that was upon a correct path, then they became lost and deviated from what was correct. Even they use it linguistically in the Arabic language. For example, dalaltu ani tariq, that it became lost from the road, or we became lost. We became lost, or we went astray from the correct way or the correct path that was taking us to our destination, to that effect. So the dalal is something, the one who becomes lost. Becomes lost. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word dalal. وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ, who's more stray than the one who invokes besides Allah? And we know that what was used in the ayah, if you look in your book, the word that was used in the ayah in your books was the word dua. مِمَّن يَدْعُ. And we said that dua is of two types. So what are they quickly, everyone? Dua what? Supplication of worship, which is the worship itself, and also the dua, the second type, is one raising his hands and asking Allah. Is the second type of supplication. In which we'll find, like we said, some people think that they're separate. They are in certain instances, but you'll find that certain ibadat, they are combined at one time, simultaneously. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But anyway, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the one who is more stray, who is more stray than the one who invokes of both types of dua, whether it be worship or whether it be what? Asking Allah. Then when one who invokes besides Allah, all the way up to the day of resurrection, in which none of them can answer the invocation or the supplication of the one who what? Supplicated. As we talked about before, as we talked about in regards to what happened with Abdul Qadir Jilani, and we said that the different types of tricks that the shayateen or the unseen devils can play on people. By when people go to the dead and raise their hands, supplicating to them, or even people living. As number one, as we said, when a person goes to a dead person or even a human being, and they're asking them as they would ask Allah, meaning in some type of harm that when they want removed, or some type of benefit that they want to attain, no doubt, that when they do this, this is the one of the most types of affairs which are more severe and horrific than the polytheism, like we talked about, of the Quraysh during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Because this belief was unprecedented. When we say unprecedented, that it was not known. As even all the polytheists during the time of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ did not believe this. But however, due to the fact, as we discussed last class, that during the time, or rather that these days and times, so contemporary times, so these days that we're living in now,
as you'll find that the Muslims go to certain people who are dead and raise their hands, asking the dead for certain things. Oh, allow my wife to become pregnant. Allow me to have twins, or allow me to have children. Or asking the dead, remove me from my hardships and my stress that I'm facing in my life. Help me. Asking this dead person. As we talked about what happened with Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, that he said, even Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah had mentioned about how the shayateen can play tricks on human beings. And from the tricks that they play is they will climb in the grave of the dead individual until if the person who's invoking asks them, then that shaitan will make a voice answering the person who's asking them. Meaning the one who's supplicating, the shaitan will answer him. All of that in order for him to fall inside of what? Polytheism, which is the most hideous, most greatest an evil you can think of in your mind. Think of the most disgraceful thing that a human being can do. Polytheism is worse than all of that. Whether if you can say murder, killing, as we remind every occasion. Let's just say a person now slaughtered, let's just say 1,000 babies here in this room, unjustly. Little infant children, which is tremendous. Polytheism is worse than that. Shirk and polytheism is worse than that. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So now when a person raises his hand to this dead person, the shaitan can come and answer their supplication and make a voice. As we talked about before. Even to the point, as I'll talk about at the salah, after we finish praying, even to the point where, if they start to do it habitually, to the point where Shaykh al-Islam will read it, where Shaykh al-Islam even mentioned and said, how even if those people who used to invoke them or even sacrifice for them, some type of sacrificial animal, they were slaughtered for that particular dead person, thinking they're drawing close to that dead person by slaughtering for it. In actuality, it's a shaitan, allowing them to hear a voice and responding to them, just as what happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, as what happened with the idol that they used to worship, what was called Uzzah. If you even look to the history of the Uzzah, the shaitan used to make a voice to those who used to worship it. It's the same thing that happens in these days and times with the Muslims, no different. Of those who are dead, in which the shaitan will make and create a voice responding. So the people think that is what? That dead person is actually alive, or he's aiding them, or he's giving them what they're asking. However, the shaitan tricks them to the point if one does it, and even if he slaughters for the dead and he commits polytheism and he does it habitually, let's just say one day that person stopped doing it. He left off his polytheism. Or maybe he was late. Maybe he used to do it on a certain day. He used to slaughter for that particular dead person, which is polytheism, of course. Shaitan will now start to attack him. Or even might even come into an animal where you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam brings stories where the animal will attack the human being. And put it in the mind that, oh, I was late for slaughtering for so-and-so dead, or the dead person who was what? That person who I used to invoke or I used to slaughter for. All of that was an attack and a plot from the shaitan to make him fall into polytheism again. So he can resume his polytheism. To the point where, like we said, where the shaitan can even harm the individual for leaving off the shirk, for leaving off the polytheism. Also, likewise, you'll find that he said that some of the shayateen could even steal someone's wealth and bring it to the person. Or they would bring certain objects that they would ask for. All of this was aid from the shayateen of the unseen devils in order for the human being to think that what they're doing is correct. When in actuality, all of it is what? All of it is incorrect and all of it is polytheism. But however, the shayateen, even in the case where if someone was to invoke them, this is the affair in which they would love the human being to commit, because this is the most ultimate oppression, where there's no oppression after that one. as we said last class. Even like we talked about what happened with Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, rahimahullah. As we said, that Abdul Qadir al-Jilani was from those who were from the righteous, who was from the ulama al-Hanabila, like we mentioned last class. He was from the scholars of the fiqh of Imam Ahmad. And from those benefits, in which we'll talk about, inshaAllah, as even Shaykh al-Islam refuted the notion that you'll find even to this day of those who are from the deviant sect called the Sufiya. The deviant sect called the Sufiya, in which even a Shaykh mentioned in his book, Hadihi Sufiya, which I have in my office. It's a book called This is Sufiya by Abdul Wakil, that he mentioned in his book called Hadihi Sufiya. It's right in my office. That he mentioned and said about Abdul Qadir al-Jilani that he was from the righteous. He was those who adhered to the correct aqeedah. As Shaitan had raised his status to the point of those who are from the deviant sect called the Sufiya, went to the point where they started to what? Go to the extremes in him, raising him above his level until the point that they started to even put the aspect of istighatha towards Abdul Qadir Jilani, performing the affair of istighatha to him. Whereas there were people who are from the righteous, that you'll find that people make dua to them who are righteous. Some of those righteous were Abdul Qadir Jilani. As I'm going to sum up, inshaAllah, there's also from the righteous who's called, for example, Ma'ruf al-Karhi, as I'll talk about, and Junayd ibn Ahmed, wa Ma'ruf al-Karhi, wa Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, that people used to what? Supplicate to them. All of them. All of them who are righteous. Ma'ruf al-Karhi, al-Junayd ibn Ahmed, Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, all of them adhere to the Aqidah to Salaf, and they were from the righteous. Shaykh al-Islam have laid down something that was very what? Very beneficial, which I'll read after the Salah, because I'm about to stop. Where he said, as all the ulama from the Salaf had unanimously agreed that Imam Ahmad was better than them and more virtuous. And they were from the Tabi'een and the scholars of the past that were way more virtuous than them. And he said, at the head of all the righteous who are more virtuous than all of them put together, Imam Ahmad, Abdul Qadir Jilani, was the Khulafa al-Rashideen, the Sahaba. And despite of that, if it was, and it's not, permissible to invoke these people, they would have been the people that deserve to be what? Invoked for. If that was the case, then why are you invoking these people, even though there are those who are more virtuous and more higher than level in degree as far as in their status with Allah? And despite of that, you will never find it that any of the Khulafa al-Rashideen, during the time where the people had actually worshipped them. There's people amongst the Khulafa from the Sahaba, from Ali ibn Abi Talib, Umar al-Khattab, Uthman bin Affan, all of them are better and more righteous than Imam Ahmad and those who came after Imam Ahmad. From Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, wa Ma'ruf al-Karhi, and Junayd ibn Ahmad, all of them. And despite of that, you will never find that none of the Salaf used to invoke the Khulafa al-Rashideen for Umar al-Khattab. And if it was permissible, they were the ones that would have been deserved because they're what? More high in status. And despite of that, it's not permissible because it's still considered polytheism. So Shaykh al-Islam, they down this argument in refutation against the Sufiya to say to them, if this was the case where you now invoke these people in worship, Imam Ahmad was way more virtuous than them because they were the ones who aided the madhab, which was established by Imam Ahmad. And all the ulama unanimously agree that Imam Ahmad was more virtuous and more knowledgeable than all of them, Abdul Qadir Jilani and every one of them. Because we know that Abdul Qadir Jilani had authored the book, as we said last class, called Al-Ghunya. Al-Ghunya fi Madhab al-Imam Ahmad. The book was called Al-Ghunya, which was servicing the Madhab al-Imam Ahmad, which is to let everyone know that Imam Ahmad was more virtuous than Abdul Qadir Jilani. So why aren't you invoking the Imam Ahmad? And before Imam Ahmad was the Khulafa al-Arba'a al-Rashideen al-Mahdiyin. Then before Imam Ahmad was the Khulafa from the Sahaba. So why are you not invoking them either? Why are you not invoking Imam al-Bukhari? Why are you not invoking Imam al-Shafi'i? Why are you not invoking Imam Malik? Why are you not invoking Ali ibn Abi Talib? Why are you not invoking Umar al-Khattab? They're way more virtuous than Abdul Qadir Jilani. And these were the arguments that Shaykh al-Islam laid down in order to see and show what everyone that what they're doing and practicing is incorrect and is false. We'll continue after the Salah, inshallah. جزاك الله خير.